So Stephen King is an author that is very hit or miss for me. I have loved some of his books and I have hated some of his books, but even his books that I love and rank up as some of my top standalones, Pet Sematary, in case you're wondering. Even those, I consistently have some of the same problems with King's work over and over again. So I did a short asking people to recommend just his best work. What are some of the best books he's put out? I was gonna select 3 and then do a dedicated vlog reading through his books and just kind of talking it out as I read through them. And easily the most frequently commented recommendations were It and The Stand. And if you're gonna make me read a 1,200 page book, I will read one book for this vlog. So this vlog is dedicated to It. And so far, I love it. Oh my goodness. So I love a town that has something wrong with it, and everybody knows, everybody's aware that something is happening here, or at least a lot of people are, but nobody leaves. Or if they leave, they can't quite escape it. I love, like, that's such a specific kind of horror trope that I'm obsessed with. So instantly I'm drawn in. But then the way, this is a spoiler-free vlog, by the way. I will talk about the book, but I won't, I'll keep it spoiler-free unless you're very, very spoiler sensitive. We're good to hang. I love the way King depicts the clown, It. In these very beginning chapters, the way he depicts this clown that hides in the shadows, and the way it talks to the kids that it's trying to lure in, or the way the clown is depicted dragging a body away, or the way it's all done is, well, it's King. He's very good at that very unsettling, sinister, disturbing descriptions. And I love it. It's such a strong start. So now I'm at a point where we're following characters that have left, and we're seeing how their lives have changed, what their life circumstances are, the things that they've accomplished, and the things that are not working out for them. Just getting very close to these characters, getting to know them very, very well before everything happens. And that's something that I'm used to with King. I'm used to him having a very slow character focused beginning so that things can come together really strongly, and I really like that about his writing. I'm more of a character focused reader. I tend to prefer slow paced books that really get me in the environment, as opposed to something that's just action is happening constantly. So I'm pleased. I found my first King-ism, which is what I call something that is in all of his books, or at least everything that I've read, which is where he's describing something and I'm with him, and then he just says something that I'm like, I see what you were going for, I see what you mean, but why'd you say it like that? And the reason is because it's King, and it's just something that he does. So I found my first King-ism so far in the book. That was fun. But anyway, I'm having a great time. This is an incredibly strong start, and I'm feeling good. And you know, a book about cute, happy birthday clowns. What could go wrong? It's not just that we're seeing a glimpse into them as adults and their careers and their lives. It's that we're seeing that they forgot. They forgot where they came from. They forgot their childhood. They forgot all of it until they get the call. The call saying, it started again. The thing that happened to us as children is beginning again in Derry. And they all made a commitment, they all made a promise to each other that if it ever started again, they would all come back. Why? I don't know yet, but that's what's happening. They're all returning to Derry, and as they get there, they're remembering the things that they forgot. When they left Derry, they left everything, including their very childhood, behind. But now that they're back, it's all coming back. back. So we have them as adults, we're being reminded alongside them their lives as children. So we're going back and forth with these narratives, slowly unveiling what they experienced as children and why they have to return and what it is they're up against. And it's not just the clown in the sewer that says everything floats down here, or that tries to pull you in or drag you away. It's whatever it manifests as is individual, it is unique to the individual. So you have a kid whose brother died in a really brutal way, so his brother shows back up looking like he probably did in his last moments. This really grotesque, horrifying thing that reminds me a lot of Pet Sematary, which is my favorite King book that I've read so far, but there's other manifestations as well, and it seems to be unique to the individual. I'm still figuring it all out. I know so little about this book. I've never seen an adaptation. This is really new to me, and it's really good. King writes this upsetting imagery of whatever it's manifesting as for the child. He writes this upsetting relationship that these kids have with their past really well. I'm having a great time. This story is really gripping me. 400 pages in, going real strong. I am 824 pages into this book, which I said at the beginning of the vlog that this was a 1,200 page book, but I do have a compact version of this story, which means that it's almost 1,500 pages. So I've got some time to go. One thing that I love about this book, and that I think that King just generally does very well, is his characterization of main characters. He really takes his time to build characters up in his stories. He really takes his time to make characters feel so real, so human, like you know them. And with this book, there's several main characters, and so he's taking that time for each of them, to the point that sometimes it feels like we're meandering a little bit, but it always comes back around. And I think the thing that I'm loving the most at the moment is the camaraderie among this group of friends. The moment where, with each individual member of this group, with each individual person, the moment where it became solidified that they're a piece of this group. The thing that they went through together, that they experienced together, that said, you're more than just a friend, you're one of us. Going through that moment for each member of the group is just, when it clicks into place, that each character, it's so satisfying. I love the dynamics within this group. I love how they feel for each other and interact with each other and value each other so deeply. I love that. And getting this back and forth between the characters, their past and their present, as I said before, they don't remember their history, they don't remember their life here in this hometown, but now that they're back, they're starting to remember it in pieces. And what they know is that this thing that appears and kills and turns into horrors, it is back. And when it was here, when they were kids, they defeated it somehow, but they don't remember how, and they're waiting for that memory to come back as well. So it's this found family group dynamic. It's this very, very, very deep characterization of each of the main characters, where they just, you know them, they're human, and their trials, their struggles, their faults, their interactions with one another and with their family, what shaped them into adults, as well as a slow understanding of it, how it appears, what it does, and eventually a discovery of how they defeated it in the past. I think I know, because of course I've heard about the scene that comes up in this book, but I have never actually looked into it. I've just heard about it, so I am aware, I know what's coming, but I don't really know how it fits into the book or really anything about that. So anyway, one way that I would describe King as a writer is that he is a full tilt writer. So my favorite horror writing of King is the subtlety that he does, where it kind of eeps into your bones. It feels uncomfortable and unnerving, and it's this slow build, and then it finally crescendos into something. And sometimes what it crescendos into is something really impactful to me, and sometimes what it crescendos into is something pretty over the top for me. So let me talk more about the full tilt thing, and then I'll circle back to that. King is a full tilt writer. So when he's writing his horror, he makes it subtle and he makes it uncomfortable, and then once it's time for the horror to come to the forefront, it's in your face, and it's loud, and it's intense, and it's a lot. Same with how he writes his horrors of humanity, people who are hateful towards individuals in their lives, towards people groups, people who are the horrors in our lives. He writes that in that full tilt way as well, where sometimes it almost reads as if it's void of nuance. And he does it on purpose, where he's trying to be in your face about it. He's trying to depict the horrors of humanity, or at least this is the way I interpret his writing. You can tell me if you interpret it differently, but he puts it just in your face, just like he does with the supernatural horrors. He does that with humanity's horrors as well, in your face. It's crass, and it's grotesque, and it's upsetting. He goes full tilt into his characterization. He will spend hundreds of pages building up a character, arguably more than necessary, but the point is he wants that character to be real and living and known to you. And it's his tendency towards full tilt that sometimes is a huge hit for me, and sometimes that's a huge miss. So one instance where it doesn't work for me is his side characters, because there are certain side characters that don't deserve the full characterization treatment, and so what he does is he gives them a shtick, and then he goes full tilt into the shtick. So like there's a cabbie in this book, a guy who's a cab driver, who has a catchphrase, and it's at the end of every single sentence he'll say something, and then he'll say, "Pardon my French if you're religious," and it's after every single sentence. And he did the same thing in Firestarter, where there was a cabbie who after every single sentence said, "Don't tell me, I'll tell you." And it's like at the end of every sentence, I was thinking, when he would say, "Don't tell me, I'll tell you," again and again, I was thinking to myself, a catchphrase is not characterization. And that shows up a lot in his work, where a character will get a shtick, not just a catchphrase, just like a thing, and then he'll go full on into it. So then you end up with side characters, like one character's wife, who just ends up being the hysterical shrew, and that's all she is. Or you have somebody's partner, I don't remember if he was her boyfriend or her husband, I don't remember their relationship status, but anyway, a male counterpart to one of the characters, who is the controlling, power-hungry abuser, and that was it. And so you get these characters who have like a thing, and then like that's their whole personality, but he leans full tilt into it to the point that it's like, because that's all they are, it's a lot. So I feel that way sometimes with his characterization for side characters. I feel that sometimes with his horror as well. Sometimes his full tilt horror hits me just right, and sometimes it kind of it goes too far to the point of just being over the top and drawing me out and kind of losing me, because it's so in your face and it's so much that it like loses that impact a little bit. I don't know how well I'm explaining this. I'm trying. maybe it makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't. I think that his main characters are top notch, and I think that his side characters can be really good and can sometimes just be this over the top caricature. And same for his horror. Usually his scenes of horror are really great, but sometimes they are so over the top that they lose me. Actually, my goal was to finish this. I'm leaving for the beach tomorrow, and my goal was to finish this and finish this video before I leave for the beach, but instead I'm going to be that weirdo reading it on the beach. I'm excited to finish this book and see how he brings it all together, how he wraps this up, and so let's keep reading. early this morning to get some reading done before the whole house woke up, and I'm pretty sure I just got to the scene, so I put my phone up on this stump and we're gonna read it together. Let's talk about the ending of it. So one thing that King did extraordinarily is that he took this fictional town and he built a history around it. He built lore around it. Let me change my angle maybe a little bit to fix this sun. So from the very beginning, King builds this town. He takes this fictional town and he builds lore around it. He builds a history around it. He builds this incredibly creepy, uncomfortable vibe and the reason why people aren't leaving. And his building up of Derry and his exploration of Derry. Really, Derry, to me, this small town, felt like its own character within the story. I felt like as the book progressed, Derry was being built up and unraveled the same way that the characters were, where with the characters, we see them as kids, we see their individual plights, we see their individual issues, we see what they're going through, we see their fears. And then as the story progresses, and it's not linear, we do go back and forth between them as kids and them as adults. As the story progresses, we also see them as adults, their careers, their lives, their marriages, their successes and their strong struggles, as well as their new fears. But it's such a big book because it's such a big story. We're not only building up, very strongly building up the past and the present of these members of the Losers Club, of this core group of characters, but we're also building up these side characters. We're building up the characters that are really important in their lives. And before I mentioned how King will sometimes with the side characters pick a stick to it, and then almost caricaturize them because of it. I stand by that. 1,500 pages down, it's still true. But it's not true of every side character. Like, we have some antagonistic forces, Henry. We have some, and more, we have some human antagonistic forces, not just the clown, that are very strongly built up, very human, lots to them. But everything that I said in that previous clip is still true. Story about fear, it's a story about facing your fears, it's a story about found family, it's a story about found self. It's a story about returning to your roots, returning to where you came from to understand it more and to overcome it. It's a story about bullying. It's kind of a coming of age story twice, I feel like. You know, you have your coming of age, the kids that become a family, who go through something together and come of age because of it, and then you also have the adults that kind of do it again. And I kind of like that, because in adulthood you didn't come of age. In adulthood you're still having those signature moments in your life that just kind of get you to, okay, now I'm here, but here comes another signature moment, and you never really stop doing that. So lots of good in this book. As far as the pure horror moments, I don't tend to get scared in books. It's very, very rare. I wasn't ever scared reading it. There were some scenes that were really creepy and really well done, and I smiled my way through them because they were so good. There were moments that were over the top and ridiculous. Again, we've talked about that already, that just drew me out of the story and weren't scary at all. And then there were moments that were bad. So I guess we could talk about that scene. It was bad. I knew it was gonna be bad. Every time I had heard about it, I had heard, this is a masterpiece, there's that scene, and it's horrible, but this is a masterpiece. And so I went into this thinking, all right, cool. So it's an incredible book, phenomenal book, with a scene that sucks. I'll probably hate the scene, and I'll probably love the book despite it. And I was fine with that. And I have read the scene, and it sucked. I understand why it's such a talked about scene, and I understand why people kind of say, oh yeah, there's the scene, because it wasn't, I mean, I just came out of reading The Magicians, and there's several the scenes in Magicians, not like this, but there's several the scenes in Magicians that's like, oh, okay, I loved the book, but let me warn you about some things. And I still love that series despite it. And so I was like, okay, yeah, give me another one of those. I will hate that scene and I will love the book. This is definitely more than I expected. So the scene sucked, right? I feel like I understand what King was going for. I think that the scene, if you remove all of like your critical thinking, the scene makes sense with the themes of the book, and I can understand why King, I don't understand. I get the progression of logic that brought King to write that scene. I just think that his editors should have said, hey man, you're on drugs. You're wrong on this one. Like, this is wrong. You did it bad. Let's try again. I know that there are authors that will kind of talk about, and I've heard authors talk about how once you kind of get to a certain point, once you're putting out a certain amount of books and you're bringing in a certain amount of cash for the publisher's editorial staff kind of shifts to just grammatical edits and not so much structural. Like, you can write what you want. We're just gonna let you know if you need to fix some typos, or we'll fix the typos for you. And I think at this point in the career we can say that that's where King was, assuming his publishing house is one of those publishing houses that does that. I think we can go ahead and say King is one of those authors, and he was at this point, because I cannot for the life of me understand how the editorial staffs gave the okay for this one. That said, the ending, the final pages, were gutting. They were so emotional. It was a really satisfying, horrible, wonderful end, and I loved the final pages of this book. King's known for his bad endings, and this was a bad ending. It was a bad ending, but the final pages, excellent. Overall, I expected this book to be a masterpiece with a bad scene. It was not that for me. It was long. It was so long. And I have no problem with a long book. Some of my favorite books are extremely long, but I do not feel like this. It felt very bloated to me. It felt so bloated to me. It was over the top in some of the scenes, so over the top that it just ruined the scenes for me. Not just the one scene, but other scenes throughout the book that were so over the top that it was like, this isn't scary, this isn't fun, this is doing nothing for me. It's just so much. I'm really glad that I read this book. It has some really iconic pop culture scenes, so I'm glad that I finally have read them. I've read them in context. I know what they're about, but this is another book that I say I like some things, I don't like other things. King is an author that I can appreciate what he does well, but there's also enough that just doesn't work for me personally as a reader. And I'm excited to try out some other horror. I will say that I'm bummed that this is my ending place for this vlog. I expected to end with, okay, I'm ready to go for more King. I expected to end with, this was a masterpiece with a bad scene, I'm so excited to read more, and that's just not where I am. I think I'm gonna end this vlog with asking you to recommend me some more horror outside of King that you've read that you think is phenomenal. What did you think of it, if you've read it? Did you love it? Did you not? And why? I'd love to hear from you. And recommend me your favorite horror book outside of King now. I had you recommend me your favorite King in the short. Now, for this video, recommend me your favorite horror beyond King. If you like reading vlogs, I post them weekly over on Murphy Napier Reviews, so you should check that out. It's linked in the description. I post videos every Monday and Friday on this channel, Tuesdays and Thursdays on the review channel. I'll see you again soon. Bye.